Paul Sagoo, who is the founder and CEO of the very prestigious Asian Awards and graced with some of the biggest names in entertainment, from Shah Rukh Khan to Mr. Bachchan himself to Idris Elba, Zayn Malik, to name a few, and an advocate for the Asian community around the world. Paul has received an OBE in 2022. If you could think that, okay, the BBC are listening right now, what do you want to say to the BBC?
Scrap the Asian network.
So what you're saying, because we have a spin-off, like, you know, specific radio station that is built around the Asian community in the UK, it is stopping UK Asian artists from actually making it mainstream.
Yeah, it's process marginalisation. Give us 8 to 10 hours on Radio 1. Get our DJs on Radio 1. Take what you believe to be the cream of Asian network and give them space on Radio 1. You're represented by the taxpayer. You are a BBC station. You should be promoting us on the best platform that you have.
Wow. Paul, what an intro.
Well, you did it. So that's the important thing.
You actually did it. That is like, when I was writing that out, I was like, wow, Paul, you've done so much.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, you know, when you do things and you know how difficult some of these things have been, you don't actually see them as points of success. I mean, through what I've done, I've met so many successful people. And if you ask them, are you successful? Most of them say no. Most of them say, yeah, I have a bit more than the average person, or I may have done more than the average person. But there's still this thing inside them that says, oh, I've got so much more to do. And actually, my time's not over, and I haven't actually paused to think, oh my God, really? Because they're on to the next thing. They're constant. If you think about actors, for example, they're only as good as their last film. So they could have done 100 great films, and their last film tanked, and that's it. They're done in their head, and they're like, wow, I've got to go on to the next film to redress that problem.
Rush.
But then they've had 20, 30 years. Take a Shah Rukh Khan, so many years of success in terms of the box office, had a few bad films, and then came back recently with a few films that have just killed it. And that's basically why. That's what's going on in their heads.
That's crazy. Yeah. And in fact, one of the things that I really wanted to explore was, with you know, creating these awards across all these different categories. Yeah. You yourself being awarded an OBE, you know, getting under the skin of, what is the anatomy of a winner? What makes a winner? What do you think it is? Do you think there's a science behind it?
I mean, one of the things I think has been really beneficial in doing the Asian Awards. I mean, there are other award ceremonies, and I never denigrate them. I think everyone has their place. A lot of people say to me, oh, but are you in competition? I'm like, there is no competition. Like, we do what we do, and you do what you do. You don't go to a car garage and say, all right, I want an SUV, and then go to a sports car and go, do you compete with the S? No, that's fulfilling one objective, and the other car's filling another objective. So from my perspective, I feel that having that broad spectrum of categories, like we honour musicians to scientists to artists to philanthropists to entrepreneurs. So you have this, we say it's pan-sector, so it's every part of human achievement, sports, etc. And each of those areas, when you get a room full of these amazing people, but none of them are competing with each other. So you could have, you know, a Sachin Tendulkar, an A.R. Rahman, a Yash Chopra, which we had in year one. Wow. None of them compete with each other. They're all kind of in their own lanes doing their own thing. But there is an overwhelming theme. And I think the word I would say that really is everything is consistency. It's actually not being brilliant, because there are a lot of brilliant people that you'll never see. The greatest voice we haven't heard. We hear consistent voices. You know, when we think about music, we hear people who are consistent. Taylor Swift doesn't have the best voice by a long shot. There are so many gospel singers that could smash her out the park, but they're not consistent in what they do. She is. She's consistent. And that consistency and continually reading off the market and going, okay, I did that dance, they like that dance. Okay, I'm going to keep doing that. I'm going to keep bringing that in, and that becomes part of the flavor of who they are. And that's what I think it is. It's like everything in life. If you want to learn the piano, do you have to be great at it? No, you just have to be consistent, a little and often. talking about
That's so like as
losing
well.
weight, same thing, whatever it is, it's consistency.
It's so interesting as well. When people want to know, like, what is the science behind it, they're waiting for this really sexy answer. It's going to be like this silver bullet. And when someone comes out with, it's consistently doing the same thing.
Do you have anxiety when you brush your teeth?
No.
Right, because you've done it every day, or even twice a day, or if you're really good, 3 times a day.
Yeah.
So, and that's what it is. When you get to that level of consistency, you don't have anxiety, you don't have those feelings of like, oh my God, I'm going to fail at it. But you get so good at it, people start to go, wow, how did they get so good at it? But then if they looked at what you did, they'll go, well, of course, they were good, they were going to get good at it. There are so many people who couldn't sing at all. There's a viral video of Ed Sheeran singing when he first started. He's terrible. Now look at Ed Sheeran. So talent can be nurtured. It can be created, but it can only be created with consistency.
I mean, like, I don't know if you watched the movie with the Venus, the movie about,
the Richard story.
King Richard.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
King Richard. If that absolutely is a story of consistently doing it, whatever happens. Do you think that there's a mindset of also the fact that when you do get criticism, because in all these areas, especially in kind of entertainment and music, there is a lot of critique. There is a lot of like when you don't hit it, when that person didn't, give you the break. All of those happen before you are seeing that person, on the big screen. Yeah. Do you think there is a mindset that you need? Because yes, you can be consistent, but what about every time you get the knockback and you still got to get up and do it?
Well, the secondary characteristic is dedication. And consistency comes with dedication, because if you consistently do something, you're dedicated to doing it. It goes without saying, like going back to brushing the teeth.
Yeah.
If you decide you want to brush your teeth every other day, at some days you're going to smell quite badly. So you've got to be dedicated to maintaining that oral health. You've got to be dedicated to wanting to smell okay and all that kind of stuff. But that comes behind the consistency. And those two things together can literally get you wherever you want. I mean, I could challenge anyone who has the worst voice on the planet that if they did just scales for 5 to 10 minutes a day, and there's probably going to be singers that are going, no, but did it for 365 days in a row.
You're going to be better than you
started,
You're
going to be infinitely better than when you first started. Infinitely better. So, and you didn't even have the gift of a Whitney Houston voice. You didn't have that gift, but you could do it. So
that is I think reassuring as well for anyone listening, wherever you are. And like sometimes you kind of feel like you either got it or you haven't. That attitude or that mentality of that person's got it or I don't have that factor.
I mean, if we were to look at, I'm just giving the example of Taylor Swift. She's not the best singer. She's being consistent. She's stayed relevant because she's dedicated to being consistent. She's put out tons of albums. She's, as a result of the initial success that she's had, she's surrounded herself with great producers, songwriters, etc., etc., etc. So it's kind of justifiable that she sits reasonably high at the top tree. Now, is she the best singer in the world? Hell no. Hell no. I mean, she's not. But is she one of the most successful in terms of how we would gauge music artists' success? Albums sold, etc., streams, blah blah blah, tickets sold, concerts,
world tours. Yeah.
I mean, she's up there. Beyonce's probably with her neck and neck, or maybe even second. But that's because she's very good at the consistency and very good at the dedication. It's not because she's the best singer. So it's there for everyone, and I think that's the case with most things, except maybe for certain physical activities, certain sports where you have to be a specific size. So for instance, like if you want to be the best jockey in the world and you're like my size, no amount of me is going to be the best jockey in the world, because the horse is going to die after a few furlongs. So things like that, you have to be kind of born into that kind of realm, which makes you a better candidate for that versus someone else. But I could probably be a reasonable jockey, not saying I would have to be dedicated to losing a ton of weight.
I want to see this.
Be mega small, like, very, 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 very demure in that sense. You can make progress in everything.
Yeah.
There's no two ways about it.
I totally get that. And I do think that there is a liberation in that mentality, which opens up what do you want to do, because it is available to you. You can't hide behind the fact that I can't do it, or I don't have it. It's actually like, were you really that committed in the first place?
Yeah.
So it really comes back to you.
Yeah, and I think the other really important thing is to understand the term relative success. So, for instance, let's say I try and run 100 meters now. I'd probably take me about, maybe, if I was lucky, maybe 18, 19 seconds. What's the world record? 9.59 Usain Bolt, right? So he's running it roughly half the time I would. But even at this later stage in my life, if I went hell for leather for a year, I could get down to maybe 12, 13 seconds, maybe even less, maybe even sub 12 seconds. It's not improbable. It's possible. But look at that relative success. Look where I've gone from 18, 19 seconds down to 12, or I haven't run the 100 meters in God knows how many years, so I don't know if that's...
Someone's going to be challenging
Someone's going to be like, 18, 19, Paul, God, I could walk it in that thing. But like, if you think from 19, let's say, to 12 seconds, right? In a year, if you had that percentage change, in terms of being, what's that, like 80, 90% change in that amount of time, most people would go, that's insane progress. So it's relative, and that's the pressure that people apply themselves. If I were to compare myself to the global best, I'm going to fail to get to a Usain Bolt, especially because from 12 to 9.5 seconds is literally it's the last mile. It's the hardest part of anything. Yeah. You could run for 10 years and never get to sub 10 seconds. But that relative success should be celebrated.
Made like a 70%.
And I think the people who are very happy in life celebrate that relative success.
Yeah.
And they're the ones who don't have these, mental issues, mental breakdowns. Oh my God, what's happening? You think people look at people and go, oh my God, they had everything. Why do they do that? Why do they put themselves in one of the... Well, because they're not looking at relative success. They're looking at collegiate success. They're looking at global success, and they're going, well, I'm not there. Well, you never need to be there. You don't need to be the richest man in the world to be comfortable. Not at all. The most expensive thing you could buy is a yacht. If you don't, I don't swim. I'm learning. I don't swim. Consistency.
Yeah.
A yacht for me is useless. So let's say I was worth $500 million. That's like insane money, because I'd buy a plane, nice house, few houses here and there, maybe have a few companies have interest paying me.
More, yeah.
Like, do I need to be 200 billion up there with Elon Musk and the rest of them? No. So why am I going to go, well, I'm not rich because I'm not there?
Yeah.
Because relatively successfully, by the average person, I never have to worry about financial success ever again. I never have to worry about it. That's where happiness is. The happiness is understanding relative success.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that kind of framing of it, for sure. So even when you kind of when you came up with this idea of doing awards,
yeah,
were you kind of just fascinated with creating winners within these categories, or was it particularly to do with the Asian community and you're like, we need to do something here? What was the catalyst for that?
So I guess, and people say to me, well, it's a bit racist, isn't it, Paul? Can white people not win? And I said, we have had white people win our awards. People, a gentleman called Jack Prieger set up a charity working with women and poverty in Calcutta, ran that charity for 40 years. He's still alive. Amazing charity. And we honored him in 2017. It's not because, the fact is he was a white individual. He is a white individual. It's the fact that he had impact on Asia. So we say our winners are people who are either Asian by descent and or have an impact on Asia and or Asian. So that's the criteria. The reason why I did it is because no matter how good our people got on a global scale, they never got the press, the acknowledgement that their Western counterpart would. So if you have Vijay Singh, this is made up name, and then you have Tom Smith, and they're both as good as each other, Vijay Singh, in any domain, Vijay Singh would not get any of the recognition that Tom Smith would. So our winners are the best at what they do, regardless of being Asian. All I did is I just said, they just happen to be Asian. So take note. That's it. That was literally it. It wasn't about... none of our winners are people who are bad at what they do, and when you pick them because they're Asian, they're all at the top. They all go toe to toe with their Western counterparts, and it's only because we still live, unfortunately, in a society where highlighting Asian achievement, and I talk about Asian achievement being from Turkey through to Japan, is still not a priority for Western media. And unfortunately, Western media is the media that gets listened to. It's changing ever so slightly. The worm is turning so damn slowly. I mean, it's not changed in 50 years. It's going to take another.
Do you think we still haven't changed that much?
No.
I mean, like,
No,
especially
no.
with, like, let's say the introduction of, you know, you've had Diljit Dosanjh, you know, doing Coachella and being on Jimmy Fallon.
But let me explain the Diljit and the Punjabi music phenomenon. That's got nothing to do with people necessarily in the West. That's because in order to show diversity, and Coachella is a great example of diverse music, they needed to show that they're capable of taking artists from different parts of the world. And if you think about it, Coachella, Glastonbury, all these things, these are commercial businesses. They're not charities. They're not there to go, oh, you know what, we haven't had a Korean singer, let's get a Korean. No. they're there to sell tickets. They look at their demographic and go, why do we have a majority of white people coming? Why don't we get some black people? Like, we need some black artists. Why don't we get some brown people? Why don't we need some Asian artists? Why don't we get some Chinese? Why don't we get some, whatever the case is, they are appealing to artists of that demography. And if you were to look at big artists from India at the time of Coachella, you'd be hard pushed to find anyone but a Diljit. Maybe, and AR's not a performer, so maybe his thing wouldn't really work. He's not a performer as such to the level as Diljit is. I mean, a Sidhu Moosewala would have done it, you know, if he was still alive. So I think it's a question of people looking for that variety. That's what's enabled it to happen.
But do you think, like, to kind of be devil's advocate here, do you think that it is a society or the framework that we live in, right? Or do you think it's from an individual level that people from, let's say, South Asian community, right, be it British Indian, be it, you know, British Muslim, be it from India, Pakistan, anywhere that is living around the world, is not pushing themselves enough to be on that stage? Which one do you think it is?
I mean, let's talk about music. Let's actually just break down music. So I'll go back to Apache Indian. You know, he was probably one of the first British Asian artists that did that traversion to the Western world. So Boom Shakalak, when he first started, I think he first released Boom Shakalak in 1996. I think it got re-released in 2002 or 1993 or something like that. It was around the university time. Same with Punjabi MC's Mundiya To Bach Ke. That came out in 1990 something, 1, 2, 3 or something like 3, maybe even 3 or 4. It came out around that time, but it had this second coming when obviously Jay-Z did his lyrics on it and what have you. And those things happened around 2002 from memory. Now, coincidentally, the BBC Asian, a lot of people ask me, why do you have beef with the BBC Asian? I don't have beef, but these are facts. So if you take the BBC Asian network, for instance, prior to the network existing, these guys would get Radio 1 airplay. They would get the mainstream radio airplay. Now, if you think you've got a delta of maybe 50 times listenership between a Radio 1 and an Asian network, 50 times. Imagine getting that airplay. You're going to get to number 1, number 2, number 3. And I think there was a week or 2 weeks or something from memory in 2002 when you had Mundiya To Bach Ke, Punjabi MC was number 1 or 2, I think, and Boom Shakalak was in the top 10 as well. That's like unheard of. And, you know, it's not happened since. And it's not happened since.
Wait. So what you're saying, because we have a spin-off, like, you know, specific radio station that is built around the Asian community in the UK, it is stopping UK Asian artists from actually making it mainstream.
Yeah, it's process marginalisation. It's basically saying you have your own shop. Why do you need to go in the rest of the shops? We've given you what you want. So what they've done is they've gone, oh, you're privileged. You have your own radio station. Yeah, but you've given us the worst shop in the shopping mall. You haven't given us the opportunity to be front of mind where the most is advertised. I mean, I'll give you another example. I don't even think they know what they're doing realistically, and might come across controversially, but let's look at the Asian Network chart. Does it have people of Asian origin, South Asian origin, or does it promote South Asian music? And you could argue now that they do both, but if they did both consistently, they had Zayn Malik singing Pillow Talk, and that hit number one in. So that's an Asian artist doing an English song, right? But then why have they ignored Charlie XCX for all this time? She's Gujarati. She's half Gujarati. Why did they ignore her? So is the answer that they didn't know she was Gujarati? In which case we got problems. You're running an Asian music channel and you don't know that this person exists. That's bad. Or did you just think, well, it's English music, and the only reason why you cared about Zayn is because he came to the Asian Awards and went, I love being Indian. I love being Asian. Is that what put you towards that? Same with Naughty Boy. Is it because he declared himself as an Asian that you went, oh, he says he's Asian, so let's stick him in the Asian? So what is it? You can't do both. And if you're going to do both, then you got to do it consistently across the board. You got to have everyone who's considered Asian, whether they sing Arabic music, Indian music, English music, should be in that chart. So why don't they do that? So that's an inconsistency.
Do you think that, because I have never thought about it like this, I mean, for most people when they think about, a radio station like BBC Asian Network, you're kind of like, oh, wow, they're promoting Asian music and British artists.
Well, that's another problem altogether.
But you have kind of like flipped it on its head there, because I've never thought about it like this. Do you think that is intentional, or do you think that has happened by almost like default, where you've gone, hey, we've got a great show, but now it's made it so small that it just hasn't got the amplification?
I think it's just evolved. Look, it started off, the Asian Network started off as an AM radio channel back in sort of 1996 or something, from Birmingham. So the middle of the bend, literally the middle of the village. It started as that. I'm not even sure it was called the Asian Network then. I can't remember. But then in 2002, it got its DAB license and became a national channel. Another problem I have with it is the fact that it's called the Asian Network. Like, in what circumstance is the BBC able to dictate what the term Asian means? I'll give you an example. If I'm Japanese or Korean and I pay my license fee, my music as a Korean is the most popular music on the planet. K-pop is the number one music on the planet. At any one time, they normally have the biggest boy band in the world, be that a BTS, or the biggest girl band in the world, be that a Blackpink, etc., etc. If I go, oh, Asian Network, what's that? Switch it on, and I'm listening to every music apart from mine, and I consider myself Asian, which why wouldn't they? Because they're Korean. Why are they not being represented of that? Why don't they give Korean music an hour? Japanese music an hour. Why don't they Turkish music? There's no such continent as the Middle East. The Middle East is Asian. There's a whole Arabic fusion that could have been done. Why don't they do that? And so what they've done is they've coined that phrase, owned that phrase discriminatorily. They've owned that phrase, and they're not doing anything with it. My idea would be to disband it completely, get rid of it, and give us 8 to 10 hours on Radio 1. And I don't think, Nikita, Haroon, the people who work on the thing, they wouldn't care if you said to them... I love
Nikita, by the
way.
Yeah,
I know, me too. But like, they wouldn't care if you said to them, do you want to be a Radio 1 presenter, or do you want to be an Asian Network? Yeah. They would jump at it, even if they say, it means I go from 8 hours to 2 hours a week. They would love it. You know what? It would popularise our music. All of a sudden, a Juggy D would be on Radio 1. All of our artists would get Radio 1 play, 50 times the reach of an Asian Network. We would transform the music. It would force talent to the top. It's the way to do it. The fact that we haven't had a moment in time where we've had 2 top 10 British Asian artists since the beginning of the DAB broadcast of Asian Network can only mean that it's done that. And we know every time. Look, as Shah Rukh Khan comes to the UK, he goes and has an interview with Haroon. Haroon's a lovely guy, but why is he not on Graham Norton? He's one of the most popular. True. He's one of the most popular actors on the planet. In fact, the most popular. Over 2 billion fans. Why does he not go on Graham Norton? The last time he was on TV was Jonathan Ross, almost 20 years ago. Like, why do these people? Priyanka Chopra comes to the UK now, and she goes straight onto the Asian network. Like it's like they go, okay, who's coming? South Asian, yeah, Asian network. Whoever it is, it's like there's your door is there. Your door is there. You can't complain because this is dedicated to your audience. No, their audience is an international audience. There's no point in telling an Indian who Amitabh Bachchan is. There's no point in telling an Indian who Shah Rukh Khan is. We need to tell the Western people who these people are. That's the point of the Asian Awards. We're telling Western audiences, look at this person. This person is more popular than any of your Hollywood actors. Your top 5 combined don't have the reach this person has. Let me tell you a little bit about this person's story.
I know that there's been a lot of growth in Canada, and also, obviously loads of artists from India are starting to make a international kind of presence. Not loads, but there are some. But I never ever thought that there was a problem due to the infrastructure that's been created here. I don't actually think, now you've actually put it out so clearly like you have, I'd like to think that it wasn't something that was done intentionally, but I feel like we have moved on so much. We have become globalized. Like the world is becoming globalized. I mean, you just had to see like Couple Show, and now you're getting, all sorts of international stars on there. You've had Ed Sheeran on there. And despite having language barriers, it worked. So if we don't change this format soon, we're going to be the ones that are left behind.
Which is why, if you look at British Asian music, it's dying and or dead. It's on its knees. Like if you took 10 British Asian artists and said, can any one of you, or even collectively, fill Wembley Arena? The answer will be no. They can't fill Wembley. 10, take all 10 of them and fill Wembley Arena. I'm not saying the half of Wembley. I'm saying the whole of Wembley, all 18,000. Can they do it? The answer is they can't do it. You get a Diljit coming here, smashing it, can fill it not just once, 10 times over probably. A Sonu Nigam, any of these characters, Atif Aslam, any of these guys from India, they could fill it easily. So,
and do you think that's because of the powerhouse of PR, the infrastructure, the kind of like real kind of crescendo they have behind them now? Obviously, they've built up to that.
Yeah.
But once that machine starts working, it starts really expanding.
And there's another thing as well, and this is going to sound really surprising. The management and infrastructural support in India is way more professional than it is here. There are artists here who don't want management because they go, oh, you're going to take 20%, aren't you? Or you're going to take 15%. Oh my God, I can't handle that. Because the thinking is so low-term modality. It's like, oh my God, I'm so precious about, well, hold on a minute. Do you want to give away 20% of £1 million, or do you want to keep 100% of 100 grand? What do you want? How do you want to do this? And the Indians in India, these guys have taken on that Western US model because that's where their influence was. We're no longer the influence. British is no longer the influence on India. It's America now. They've bypassed us. They look at Hollywood. They look at the art musicians. They look at the artists from there. They don't look at Britain, which they used to maybe 30, 40 years ago. And so they're getting this influence, and they're getting repped by, the CAAs and the Doug William Morrises and all these kind of professional organizations. Whereas no artist in this country, British Asian, is repped by anyone of repute, and that's a mindset problem.
That's quite quite scandalous, actually.
Yeah, and it's not because I mean there's a talent there is a talent issue, I believe, because again I don't think there's enough consistent dedicated performers. But even then there's this scarcity thinking. It's like, oh my God, I need to be precious about everything. Well, no, you don't. You either want to make it big. If you want to make it big, you have to roll with the big people.
Right?
You have to roll with the big people.
To be precious now, with everything being so available with the internet and social media, it is not a time to be precious, for sure. But if you could think that, okay, the BBC are listening right now, what do you want to say to the BBC?
Scrap the Asian network. Give us 8 to 10 hours on Radio 1. Give us some Radio 2 play for more classical and or appropriate Radio 2 listener music.
Get our DJs on Radio 1.
Get our DJs on Radio 1. Take what you believe to be the cream of Asian network and give them space on Radio 1 and scrap it. Save yourself some money and put it towards that instead. Because I think that will be the best thing for the British Asian music, and not just British Asian music. Talent, like acting talent. Let me give you a really good example. Think about what Netflix have done. Netflix have done exactly what I'm talking about. When a good Indian program, Kapil, is on, Kapil's show is on Netflix UK.
Yeah.
They're not discriminating. They're saying if something's good, we're going to stick it on there. We don't care where it comes from. We get Brazilian TV, we get Love is Blind Brazil, we get this, we get UK, we get US. No one cares because that platform was designed.
They're thinking so much bigger, aren't they? They've got rid of that kind of like
one
narrow-minded.
One platform showcases everything. You don't need to go to another platform if you're of South Asian descent and you want to watch a Bollywood film, you want to watch this. That same platform can service you. That is what I'm talking about. That is what Radio 1 should be. That is what Radio 2, that is what Radio 4 should be. These channels should be devoid of any of that, intimate interest behind one particular race or community.
And I think it is about, okay, what's done is done in terms of perhaps at the time that it was done, the intent was, hey, that would be a great thing to do, but the world has moved on.
Significantly
we are living in a different world.
Yeah.
We are a digital world now.
Yeah.
Everything is like you can create something right now in your bedroom and you could be playing it on the other side of the world. So why wouldn't we almost democratize music?
And an argument that could come, we're serving the community. You don't need to serve the community. Sunrise Radio does a great job of serving the community. There are other radio stations like Sunrise, these guys, who do a great job of serving the community, and they can go right into the nitty-gritty of community issues and this, that, the other, and they're equally as available on digital radio like Asian Network is. But you're represented by the taxpayer. You're represented by the license payer. You are a BBC station. You have a duty of care to maintain the music in this country. You have a duty of care to all citizens, and you should be promoting us on the best platform that you have, which is Radio 1. You should be putting us on that stage. And guess what? You get on Radio 1, the cogs that turn in the BBC means you're on Graham Norton. It means you're on BBC News. You're on BBC Breakfast. All those cogs turn in unison. When someone comes over from abroad, they'll go, what do you want to do? We'll got him for BBC Breakfast Television, where he's then got a radio show with, I don't know who's the big Radio 1 DJs. He's then got this. He's got, and that night he's going to do Graham Norton. There you go. He's got now this consistent movement. We as Asians look at it and go, oh my God, Shah Rukh Khan's on TV tonight. Got to watch that. We pump up their numbers because we have an interest in watching that person. The people who are already Western viewers get educated.
Yeah, and Kapil Sharma's show was, sold out. I mean, in the UK. So
how many Western interviews did Kapil do while he was here?
None.
Yeah, and Netflix put him on in top 10. How does that make sense?
That makes no sense.
How come a global platform recognizes this comedian presenter from India, puts him in a top 10 show, highlights his content, and yet not a single Western media, not even a tiny smidge of an article in Daily Mail, cares about him? How's that work? How does that work?
That's pretty big.
That's marginalisation.
Yeah, that's pretty
marginalisation.
Big. And I think that if the conversation can happen, I think that's where it is. Right now, the world has changed. It might have been appropriate back then. For whatever reason, it might have felt like the right thing to do. But now that we have moved on, it is not the right thing to do because we have become global. And actually what's happening is there's becoming a massive disparity between where British Asians can reach. Every subcontinent is kind of like, it's growing.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like we're kind of shrinking.
We are.
We are shrinking.
And the talent pool is falling apart.
And one thing I've also noticed that there is a draw to go to India, right? Mm-hmm. So you know that if you can grow your platform, grow what you do, and you can hit the Indian market, you're going to, it's going to be great for you. That's why a lot of artists and presenters maybe sometimes travel over to India, because there seems to be more opportunity there than the opportunities that are presented here. I mean, I just spoke to a lovely girl called Nimi Mehta who's moved to Dubai, right? She's absolutely killing it out there. And she got one stint on MTV, and then after that, like you said, marginalised, not quite right for this. Maybe you should go to an Asian kind of network. And she just said, I'd had enough. I was like, I don't fit the profile, so I'm not going to get the big deals. So I'll go to somewhere where I do fit the profile. So she went to Dubai and she's just blown up there. And she said, you sometimes have to take yourself, you're doing the same thing, you go do it somewhere else and you blow up just because you got the infrastructure that actually recognizes it. That's a real shame.
Yeah, and I think
shame.
the other artist that has had a fascinating career, and I've known her through a lot of her career from when she first started, is Kanika Kapoor. Great example of someone who kind of started off here as that British Asian artist, went to India, has literally been consistent and dedicated, obviously did some significant backing tracks from popular films, owned the top 10 over there, made a massive name for herself. Now, if you ask her, could you fill Hammersmith Apollo here? Can she do a 50,000 seater stadium in India all day, all night? Look at the difference. But she started here. So we didn't nurture her. She self-nurtured. She went to India. She made strides. She did all the networking. She's probably one of the most networked Asians in this country by a long shot. She knows everyone. And she did that off her own back. And she deserves massive credit for that. But we had no part to play in that. We personally, as British Asians, we didn't have a part to play in it. We can't own that and say, oh, we made Kanika. She's self-made from India. She's done the donkey work. And we have all these platforms, but none of it's been instrumental in taking her to what she is. So she's an example of someone who knows how to reach out. Jay Sean didn't get a number one here with Down. He got it in the US. We didn't even give him a number one. He had to go to the US to get recognition. So it shows that it's a broken system. The system's broken. It's broken.
And I think, if anything, from this conversation, I really hope that, both our listeners, and I hope that this can get through to the BBC. I think we need to send it directly to them. Not that they are single-handedly responsible, but I do believe all the bigger institutions within television and film do have a part to play.
I mean, look, they are not independent. Let's look at it. They're not a global radio. They're not a Capital. They're not a KISS. They're not a that. They're not one of these commercial independents. They are funded by the license payer. Right, everyone in this country pretty much, it's hard to argue you don't watch TV. Right, you can't say I don't watch TV. Everyone is pretty much, every householder is a license payer, right? So effectively it's a tax. We pay a tax that funds that. They have a duty of care to every citizen. We as an ethnicity, we make up, I don't know what the numbers are, 10-12%, right? Do we get 10-12% of their infrastructure? Hell no, we don't. This is not being I'm not trying to be critical of the LGBT community, but there's significantly less of them proportionally than there are of South Asians, and they get 10 to 15 times more of the airplay, more of the focus from both what we see on screen and what we hear on radio than we do. So there is something. They deserve that. Not saying that that's wrong, but I'm just giving a comparison of another marginal community that has a disparity in terms of how it's being presented by the BBC.
And that probably is because if that community had been given their own radio station and not been told that you can have your music anywhere, that would be the same issue. It would be the same issue. So again, that's evidence to suggest that is the evidence right there that actually that system is broken and it is hindering the talent in this country.
Totally. And I've had various conversations, both heated and non-heated conversations with various different people who are ex-presenters of the Asian network, even ex-producers, and they're like, Paul, shut up, what are you trying to do? Don't you understand? And I'm like, the thing is, you're looking at nickel and dime today. You're looking at transactions today. I'm looking at what legacy you're going to leave in 10 years' time. And guess what? I'm right. 10 years, we still haven't produced a number one British Asian artist. We haven't. In 15 years, 2002, this went DAB national. We don't have a number one artist. We haven't had one number one consistent artist. We haven't.
We actually haven't. I can't think of one.
We've had Zayn Malik. Zayn Malik did not come through the Asian network. Zayn Malik's popularized the Asian network because he's actually done something with them. But Zayn Malik was one of the biggest boy band members in the world. And had Zayn Malik been
filtered through into actually, like, we're only going to play your stuff on this platform,
his solo career would have died. But the thing with Zayn Malik is he just had so much pull. I mean, One Directioners are the most craziest of fans.
And also like being in America and
Yeah,
all of that.
I mean,
so...
he's a global star. There's no two ways about it. But we didn't do that. We didn't do that. As British Asians, we're owning him after the fact. We're saying, oh yeah, he's ours after the fact. We didn't have anything to do with him getting that
there.
far, being that One Direction that's killing it, selling out every state in the US multiple times over, globally, Japan, this, that. We didn't have anything to do with that. But we're trying to own it now. It's kind of wrong, isn't it? Like, and yet there are people we could do something for, and we're ignoring them because they haven't made it yet.
And I think you said a very important word there. It's nurture, right? It is about nurturing the talent that is coming out of this country, because that puts us on the global stage. I do think that, you know, if we can make that change now, we are going to produce some of the best kind of global musicians in the next 20, 30 years. But that change actually has to happen now.
Let's say we say, all right, keep Radio 1 going, keep Asian Network going, but give us those 8 hours, put whomever DJs you think are right, let them do play of this kind of music, South Asian music. Watch how quickly we get into top 10. Watch how quickly our music gets popular. Watch how quickly the streams go up. Watch these guys earn money. Watch these guys build better infrastructure around themselves. Get the better management. Have that fluidity. Better quality videos. Better quality content. Better quality this. Tours. Before you know it, within a few years, you've got artists selling out Hammersmith Apollo, selling out the smaller scale venues. Before you know it, possibly even O2. You know, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I really hope I can say watch this space. I really hope that there is a mark, because I have not actually heard anyone bring this up in this context before. I've got to say, it's a bit of an eye-opener for me. Hadn't looked at it, but I do believe that when you listen to it, you can see that the proof is there. This is not like a hypothetical. It's you can pull out absolute.
No, this is fact.
This is.
I mean, everything I'm saying.
I
may be voicing an opinion, but my opinion is 100% based on fact. You know, I'm a scientist by trade. You know, so for me, just coming up with opinion without a basis of fact makes no sense.
Do you think that it's just the music industry like that, or do you think that it goes into other industries like, you know, television and film?
Well, I think
industry?
to some degree it does. I think if we look at the career of someone like a Riz Ahmed is a phenomenal actor, writer, producer, director. You know, that guy is, you know, he's one of our best. But he started off playing stereotypical Asian roles. He started off in those films which are about being Asian, as opposed to he's just playing a kid where his or a gentleman or whatever role he's playing, but it has nothing to do with the typecast. Is not about his ethnicity. He's another one who's fought his way. He's another one who's Asim Chowdhury, you know, does Chabadi. Another one. He's another one who's fought his way, who's done it. We can't claim that we've been part of his success. He's done that on his own volition. He has great management, great infrastructure around him. You know, he was on a program about a mainly white grime group. I mean, you know, that's not typecasting. I mean, yeah, his character's Asian, but the fact of the matter is he did that of his own volition. And I think there are examples of these people, but there are so many more actors and people ready to come on who don't get those parts because they don't fit some kind of criteria, and that's because they haven't been popularized. Netflix will help. But the BBC should be doing way more. Other kind of areas that we need that promotion.
If someone turned around and said to you, look, we get what you're saying, but we think it's because perhaps, you know, there isn't as many people who want to do those roles, or as much talent coming out of the UK, or even like maybe, you know, the consistency. Do people like they do a couple of things and they fall away?
Yeah.
Like, do you really think it's the infrastructure, or do you think it's the type of on the individual level that the person that's coming out?
I mean, you know, I said before about consistency and dedication. The one that drops the first is dedication, because what tends to happen is like you said when we spoke earlier, it's the knockbacks. So you go, well, I tried it. Oh, I got one little part. I tried it. So we're talking about acting. So I got one part. Okay, great. What was it? Oh, they want me to play this Indian shopkeeper. Okay, it was fine. What is it? Oh, it's in EastEnders or whatever. Okay, what's next? Oh, I've tried it. Didn't get that audition. After a while, you start to build a pattern in your mind that, I'm maybe not good enough, or there's just no roles for me. Well, there's no such thing as no roles for you. People are putting you into something that they think you're typecasted for. But then you do get this defeatist attitude, because unlike singing, you need a platform for acting. It's not like you can just go in the street and start busking acting. Singing, you can get noticed. You know, you can do things that people can find you. You can do you can go to a pub with an audience of 2. You can't go into a pub with an audience 2 and start acting. It's a different world. You have to be found. You have to be nurtured.
But don't you think that also, as well as being in front of the screen, then need for you to really be, you know, the storyteller, right? There needs to be much more storytellers, people working behind the screen who are also from different, you know, a diverse background.
Yeah.
You know, so the stories that are being written.
Of course. But they need to get a chance too. Like if you take Gurinder Chadha, who I've known for many, many years. I mean, she's obviously, everyone remembers the smash Bend It Like Beckham, but she's gone on to make other films, some of which have received acclaim, some which maybe not have received a similar acclaim to a Bend It. But she's consistently trying to bring people forward. She's consistently trying to find and nurture her own community. She is one of those beacons. Of those people who you talk about, but they're very few and far between.
In terms of saying how many success stories do we have of producers, directors, writers from not even just South Asian community, I'd say like even like Black, Asian, that from you know, from the kind of like minority perspective, is it diverse enough in television and film?
Well, I think if you look at the Black community, where they've got a head start is there are a gazillion examples of successful Black everything in the US. So if you wanted to start as a Black artist here, sports person, this, that, the other, you've got so much example to draw upon. Like literally, pick something. There will be someone who has done it at an absolutely tremendous level. Singing is just the tip of the iceberg, but acting, singing, directing, you know, all types of sports. There are examples. Now put us in that, put the South Asians in that category. Could we say the same?
But do you think that comes down to a little bit of, and I'm doing this because I want to like try and give like a polar view, right? The opposite view. Like, could it be that because we are maybe influenced into more business, more academia, like for example, you know, I'm not sure that coming up with saying that you wanted to be an actor was really looked at as being a real job or a good job ever, right? Growing up. So, okay, things are changing now. Slightly, but do you think that there is, like, for example, in business, you've got Lena Nair, who's the CEO of Chanel. You've got so many top people in CEO positions, Microsoft, as well as, you know, running top businesses, entrepreneurs. Do you think we do, maybe we do better there?
Well, what you raise is a very interesting phenomenon that has occurred. We are, as Asian people, as South Asian people, look, we run Google, we run, I mean, Asian people full stop, NVIDIA, Google.
YouTube,
I mean, NVIDIA is a good example of someone who is an entrepreneur. And Jensen Huang is an entrepreneur and an amazing business leader. He's an anomaly, to be fair, amongst Asian people, who's created this $3 trillion company that's hit the headlines next level because it's in the right place, right time, with consistent and dedication. But then if you look at all these other people, be that, you know, the Adobe CEO, all these different banks and this, that, the other, did we set up those companies? No. Were they pretty damn good before an Asian got involved? Yes. What are we good at? We're very good at understanding numbers. We're very good at operational control. We're very good at cost control. And we're very good at sticking to what this company is designed to do. Now, we have someone called Mukesh Ambani, right? Mukesh Ambani is worth, what, 120 billion of what we know of. It could be worth a lot more, right? Name me one brand that Mukesh Ambani has in the UK. One brand. Name me one thing he sells in the UK and or the US. He's worth 120 billion. I mean, name me one thing.
I know he just brought Stoke Park Golf Club, but I can't think of a brand.
Well, that's an acquisition. He bought Hamleys too. That's an acquisition. Name me one native brand that he created that's here. The answer is none. So if we take the idea of innovation from South Asians, we're copycats. We're the Chinese actually have innovated to some degree, but they're still also copycats. We're actually copycats. What we do is we take something that some Western brain has created and we go, we can do this cheaper, better, maybe not such a good on the quality, which is why there's no Indian luxury products that are actually that good, at that level. There's not a lot of faith in those kind of things.
Although I think fashion
But
design from
fashion is native to us. Like, you're not going to find a Versace doing Indian clothing better than a Sabyasachi because it's native to us. I'm talking about something that has a universal appeal. A Chanel bag can sell in India, and it can sell in China, it can sell in the US, it can sell everywhere. So the point is, the answer is, apart from legacy brands like Taj Hotels.
Why do you think this is?
Because we struggle on innovation. We're not innovative. We aren't the innovators. Innovation for Indians is taking costs down, maybe improving operational concerns. That's our innovation. Dealing with a high GDP consumptive market. So, for instance, there's a logical reason why we don't need to have Mukesh Ambani's business here, because India consumes 70% of its own GDP. You don't need to sell outside of India. You can just become a multi-billionaire several times over selling to your own market. India has a very large home market, probably one of the largest self-consumers of GDP of any country. And guess what? They're also the largest country by population, 1.46 billion now. That's the reason not to innovate, because the audience there isn't self-critical either. There's still 700 to 800 million people who use infrastructure that would be considered archaic by our standards. So they're not worried. If you said to them, you now have a mobile phone that has a 5G signal, they're like, oh my God, can you believe it? Because before then they were using plain old telephone or using a 3G network. They've just gone from here to here. Now, take that 5G network. Is that the best thing that's available? Is that a global best? No, it's not. It's not a global best. Does it need to be? No. So the market forces a lack of innovation. What it shows is that what we can do is if you remember years ago, it would take like 3 months to get an old telephone in India, but 30 seconds to buy a mobile phone, because they just went, well, why do we need to invest in this now? When we know that's available, let's just shoehorn to that. Let's just move to that. Let's just go to that. So what they do is they take what is available and just copy it. And maybe sometimes it's not as good as the way we would deal things here. Maybe it is. But the point is, it's not better. It's not better.
Do you think that this comes from, there is a scarcity mindset, as you mentioned earlier on, that perhaps generationally, just if you just think about as a country, when if I think about even how my thought process has changed in the last 10 years, right? But growing up, I was always told that if you didn't do things in a certain way, the alternative was like you'd have nothing, like you'd be out on the floor. So the fear of losing it all, and that fear of nothing is a very real thing, because if you have come from a place like India, or my my dad's from Kenya, you've seen what really bad can look like. Yep. Like you've lived side by side with it.
100%.
So that fear, perhaps you can be brilliant at anything you want to do. Yeah. But if you want to go into just, hey, let's free fall and be creative, that's a bit of a scary space to be, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, we are absolutely...
but I do also think we've probably gone into those companies and made it better, right?
Oh, 100%. I mean, Satya Nadella joined Microsoft. I think market cap was sub-trillion. It's now the largest company in the world, 3.2, 3.3, depending on share price. $3.3 trillion. It's the largest company on the freaking planet. He's been part of that. He's put trillions of dollars into the market cap of Microsoft, a company that at one time people were saying it's done. He made some logical bets. He made some big logical bets on cloud computing and on moving apps into the cloud and all this kind of stuff that have paid off significantly.
And that is a serious degree of innovation there.
What it is surrounding yourself with the right people and making decisions based on data and making decisions based on financial acumen, operational acumen, market acumen, which is all logic. And Indians kill the world in logic. That's where we are. There is no one who can understand logic better than Indians. Even though they may not apply it in their day-to-day living, everything has logical flow. Everything is logical. And that's why your Lena Nair, who's an amazing character, is great for Chanel, because Chanel needs logic now, because we're living in a data world. The more and more we become data-centric, the more and more logical brains will win. And that's the reason why that's occurring. Now, if you said, go and invent a brand new brand that no one's ever seen before, that does X or does Y and produces a product that no one's ever seen before, Indians won't be the first to do that.
They're too logical.
They would be the first. They would say, "Why do we need
what's
to?
the
Why
point?
don't we modify what we have already?" They wouldn't create something that has never existed before. You know, Americans are great at that, especially volumizing things that have a volume aspect to it. So I want to sell something to 1 billion people plus. The Americans are amazing at that. Europeans are the ones who innovate at that smaller market segment, you know, at the luxury market. Look, if you think about car brands, for example, the best cars are made in Europe. Let's face it. They are. The Germans, you know, Italians, the best cars are made here. The biggest market cars are from the US. The cars coming out of Malaysia and all are all copycats. They're all innovating. But where do they win? Operationally, they're more sound, and fiscally, they're more sound. So they're able to sell what we desire in cars in the Western world at 70%, 60% of the price. If they were the same price as a BMW, you wouldn't buy a Hyundai. You wouldn't buy a Kia.
I mean, I would say that that's quite a clever thing on the part of, you know, South Asians. But I also think that, you know, my other half is Italian. And I do notice that depending where you come from, there is almost like a generational mindset that comes with that particular country. For example, when you come from a country like Italy and you had the Romans, right, who built everything and done things at that
mass innovation.
level, that level of innovation. You know, I actually go to Italy and I go, it's lacking in foresight of what's coming next, because there is so much history. Everyone's done it so well that you're almost like, don't mess with anything, don't change it. And it's great because you kind of like keep that, you know, purity almost of the art and the culture. But I'm like, but if a chef decided to do something a little bit outrageous, it is so frowned upon, because it's like, don't mess with tradition. And so I do actually feel that depending on where you come from, right, that you are generationally brought up with certain things which might actually make you a little bit more risk averse, or a little bit more kind of like on the side of like, let's improve rather than innovate.
So there's a massive scale of everything in India, abundance through to poverty, you know, education through to non-education, literacy. You know, you've got all this going on. So it's no wonder that the middle ground is the best ground, is the one that services everyone. And the middle ground says, you don't need to be the best. You just need to get it working and make it cheap enough that everyone can use it, make it affordable. And the market is massive.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, what we do see, you know, if you think about 20, 30 years ago, predictions were made that if you think about the largest economies in the world, obviously the US has been domineering that, US, Japan, UK, Germany, France, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, you got this creeping up of these two countries, India and China, as they start pushing up. And now China's number 2 after the US, and India's like number 4 or 5, you know, probably even approaching number 3. I had this conversation with this financier once, and he said, well, you know, it's because they're innovate. I said, no. I said, if you think about it, what the internet has done, the internet has democratized opportunity. You can be sitting in a tiny little village in India, have internet access, and sell as much Amazon product as someone sitting in London. You can do the same because the democratization has occurred. So what does that do to countries? Well, if you've democratized knowledge, accessibility, opportunity, then the countries that have the most people are going to be the richest, because what you've done is you've levelized the value of every human being. So if I have 1 billion people and you have 1.5 billion, logic would say, if an alien came down and said, which country's worth the most? Say, well, the one that has the most humans is probably worth the most. So they'd say, you're worth 50% more. And that's what's happening. It's doing it intuitively, because there's nothing. 20 years ago, there was so much that I knew that someone in India didn't. Now, it's like one click away. So it's not important anymore. So if you have the bandwidth, if you have the manpower, you're going to exceed. So it's just logic. It's absolute logic that you'll have countries like that killing it. Indonesia is the next one that's going to start growing. Pakistan is starting to realize, I mean, yes, they've got some political issues, but outside of that, there's a democratization of knowledge going on there too. And I think those are the phenomenons that are pushing people up. Those are the things that are making the difference, that are making everyone's ears click. But in terms of why we're so successful in business leadership, it's because of the operational and fiscal controls that we have.
I got that down.
Yeah, I would love to see more entrepreneurialism in innovation. I would love to see a leader in, let's say, global leader in design. I would love to see someone create the next Chanel and or Gucci, a global brand that's like in the best malls on the planet, the best roads, the Bond Streets, the Fifth Avenues, the Rodeo Drives. That is an Indian and or Asian,
and I am sure that is
like
coming.
like what Kenzo did, what Kenzo Takada did.
Yeah,
I'm
sure
Miyake, these guys. But where's the Indian doing it? I want to see that. I'm sure it will happen.
I actually am sure that's coming, and I
do. I believe that too.
I think that's coming because of the mindset change of this next generation that's growing up.
Yeah.
Gen Z, and I don't even know what the one after that is called. But they are growing up with a different mindset altogether.
Yeah.
They are not households have changed.
Yeah.
People are like, your kids are looking at information that you don't even know about.
Yeah.
They're getting ideas of what they want to do and how they're going to create it before they've even gone to university. They don't even have to go through that route if they don't want to. So I do think the breakdown of the kind of like the traditional way of the family structure and what would be expected of you is broken down, because now, parents are doing it, like having their own awakenings in their own lives. So I do think that things are changing.
Yeah.
But what I can see is there's a lot of passion and also knowledge from you about how industry, from fashion, art, to going into like entertainment, into music, that actually all of that moving up at the same time actually allows us to have a global stage for Asians across the board, but actually internationally. I really feel that that's what you've been doing.
Yeah,
your
for
10
sure.
years, I think it's been 10 years.
Yeah.
11, no, a few more years.
Yeah. I mean, we took a hiatus because of COVID, but we're coming back.
When is your next one?
Well, we are currently in discussions with 2 locations, which are not the UK.
Yeah. Because
I just feel that it's become big enough that it doesn't matter that it's not in London anymore. And there are so many cities, particular if you look at Western Asia, your Abu Dhabi's, Dubai's, Saudi, etc., where there's massive focus on those areas, not least Mumbai, Delhi, other places. So yeah, I mean, it will be in the next 6 to 12 months for sure. We'll be making announcements before the end of the year.
I for sure am really excited to see that, and I think that this I don't know how, if this is something that hasn't actually been discussed. I have not heard this discussion, and I do think that if this is the start, for people to start going, hang on a second, if at the very least what we do is give 10 hours of airtime on our major channels, that is a major shift in what it's going to do
100%.
for talent in the country.
100%. And you know what? I would say even just experiment for 6 months. If you're the I don't know who the commissioner is of Radio 1, but let's just say let's say whoever it is says, okay, you know what? I've watched this, and I'm just going to give it a go. It will pay back in droves.
It really will.
They will win. They will win an audience. Those hours that they're broadcasting will win an audience, a very dedicated audience. And who's not going to want to be on Radio 1? Which artist is going to go, Radio 1, are you having a laugh? No one's going to not want to be on it. No presenter or anyone within the Asian network is going to go, I don't want to take that slot.
Yeah, and I think, even from a commercial perspective, right? Let's talk about commercials for those channels, institutions. It is a win-win for them.
Of course
it's no longer you're doing, a favor to the Asian community. It is a win for you. Look, Netflix are doing it.
Exactly.
Like, you are far behind in not actually catching up to what's going on. So if you want to be in this win-win scenario where actually what comes out is that we promote talent from the country, but actually now you are now putting your, you know, BBC or ITV is now feeling more international. You can sell your program to Netflix or whatever you want to do. It can be shown, it can be streamed across globally. Like, it isn't something that is a favor. It is something that's going to create a win-win for both. Like, totally. For sure. Totally. I can so see that.
Yeah, no, I'll give you a really good example. This is going to sound really funny, but this is actually a really good example of what integration means to products. So Waitrose. So for years, you know, you'd have, like, Waitrose had an aisle for world food. You know, and in that world food, yes, you'd get all your Bartek stuff and all that sort of stuff. But the bread,
that was so good.
But if you wanted, like, naan bread or this or that, the other, you would go specifically to that aisle. Then what they decided to do is they said, you know what, the bread stuff should be in the bread section with the rest of the bread, and they ended up selling way more naans, etc., because people went, well, it's bread, it's not in its own little pocket, it's not this pocket of stuff. So that's exactly the same thing. We don't.
Oh my God, that is like the best analogy.
Yeah, we don't need our own section. I mean, yeah, they still have it. They double it up. This doubled up. Bread is bread. It's a different type. You have wraps there. You have pittas. Why don't you put the naans there? You'll sell a lot more, because someone who's not considering naan might go, well, I thought I'd get a pitta, but actually that looks a lot tastier. I'd buy that. And you're giving them an opportunity, whereas they would never go past the world aisle. They would never. They go, I don't eat spicy food.
Yeah, you just don't. You wouldn't. That's not my thing. I'm not going to go.
I would never listen to Asian Network, but I will listen to Radio 1 because I have that on my drive time. I have this. If you played that music, I would go, oh, what's that? I like that beat, like that music, like that song, like that voice.
That is bloody, like, genius example.
Yeah.
But I actually think that we really have to actually understand that what we're talking about here, when you have the banned words like, you know, inclusivity, diversification.
I mean, diversity is broken. You know, diversity doesn't work.
When you say all these things and you're like, you know, put it in your manifesto and you're like, hey, this is what we want to be in our company. But actually, if you really understand what it means that everyone is part of that conversation, that platform becomes like a one platform that, hey, if I'm good, I'm on the same platform as you, not that you've put me on another island.
Yeah, totally.
Oh my God. I feel kind of like educated, enlightened, and pondering thought right now as we kind of close our session. Oh my God, I could speak to you. You are a plethora of information. And actually what I realized is, and I didn't, you know, obviously I know you do the awards and it's a great thing that you're doing, but I actually feel like underneath that, what you really are you've got an agenda that you do want to push, and it is to get more South Asians globally just at the top, being recognized for what they do, all the hard work they put in.
Well, the continent of Asia it's like people ask about, you know, they use the term Middle East. Middle East is actually a derogatory term. Think about the logic of this. What are you Middle East of? Right? So these are British imperial inventions when they talked about Near East, which was a term that used to be used for Turkey, etc., Middle East, and Far East. So these are the three terms. We've since dropped Near East, and we still use Middle East and Far East. So when people say I'm from the Middle East, well, you're Middle East to the UK. Every time you use that term, you're giving props to the UK because you are Middle East of the UK. The correct term is Western Asia, South Central Asia, the Eastern Asia. That's what it is. There's no such continent as the Middle East.
Wow, mind blown.
I mean, it's logic. It's like this isn't new news. This is like since cartography even began. This is like, you know, so it's actually a derogatory term if you think about it. You know, people who are proud to be of those countries, when they use those terms, they're saying we exist in reference to the British. Yeah, so for me, Asia is Turkey through to Japan.
And
it's a geographical
I think the brilliant
boundary.
The brilliant thing about actually defining that boundary, what that boundary is, makes it even better when we talk about being on a kind of global platform. because now you're not kind of going, oh, there's just this little 1 or 2 little countries we're talking about here.
Yeah.
We're talking about half the world here. Do you know what I mean? We're
yeah.
talking about...
And by population,
Yeah.
two-thirds at least.
Yeah. So, you know, how can we not represent and also big up and actually make sure that we are recognizing what the talent that is coming out from those countries and from the people that are from those countries from in around the world.
Yeah.
So when you put it in that context, not only do I kind of reframe, okay, that is the boundary, but then you go, wow, it's so significant.
2 in every 3 people on the planet are Asian.
It's so significant not to represent.
Yeah.
And
2 in
to
every
recognize
3 people are Asian in the world. 2 in every 3.
It's quite interesting as well. I spoke to DJ Bliss, and something interesting that really came out from him was that when he was growing up, he was like, "There's all these amazing artists coming internationally to Dubai," and I'm like, "Where's the Emirati DJ?"
Yeah.
You know, and he goes, I literally was like, where's the Emirati DJ going to other countries going, hey, I want to be on the global scale. And his one thing was, I want to be a DJ, but globally. Not just like, hey, I'm in Dubai, but it's important because it's representation. It's saying we can do so many things and we can be brilliant at it. And I think it's a really important conversation. So that's thank you.
You're welcome.
I feel like I'm going to say, can we go to the pub and carry this on? But I actually I'm thinking that this conversation is not just about talking about what you've done, which has been brilliant. It's about where it needs to go next, and that's really, really important.
Yeah, I think. Look, I think I said this to you before, that just talking about how I started, and it's irrelevant. You know, there's lots of interviews and stuff that I've done in the past where people can see, okay, this is how he started. And that's not the important thing. Messaging to go out and that's important for now is what do we do to get better from what I've learned? What can I impart that makes us all better?
Yeah.
Otherwise, what's the point?
Opens doors for the next generation. Open doors for,
And you can see I'm not holding back because these are things that I fundamentally believe are correct.
Thank you so much, Paul. That has been amazing.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. Thank you.